Our next speaker is Katie DeBeer. She received her PhD in classics from UNC Chapel Hill and is now a teaching professor in classics at Xavier University in Cincinnati. Her research and publications focus on issues of gender, identity, and the body in Greek and Latin poetry. Not coincidentally, her favorite television show is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'm sure you have many kindred spirits among the audience in that regard. Okay, so the title of her talk today is Embodied Identity in Ovid's Metamorphoses and District 9. And with that, I will turn it over to Katie.
Well, hey everyone, thanks to Hunter for that introduction, and thanks to Dave for that amazing talk. That was great. And Bob, my fellow panelists. And thank you all for being here at this busy time of year. It's great to see some familiar faces and names and photographs in the participant list. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and make sure I've shared my sound. Just some background, I guess. As many of you know, I'm very interested in, as Hunter was saying, in issues of identity and the body, and especially how we kind of, how our identity has all of these different facets, our mental and emotional sense of self, our social and relational identity, the identity that we understand through our connections with others, our relationships to other people with other identities, and especially how those are related to our corporeal and embodied identity. So what happens when, how does our identity change when the body changes, as inevitably happens over the course of a lifetime, or when the body is subjected to assault and invasion, which can also happen. So that corporeal aspect of identity, I think, can feel very unstable. And that instability is very much dramatized in narratives of metamorphosis, such as Ovid's Metamorphoses and this film District 9, both of which explore these kind of extreme physical transformations and concomitantly extreme losses of identity. So today I want to use these two texts, this literary and cinematic text, to kind of unpack some ideas about metamorphosis and identity and our embodied experience of identity, and also hopefully get some feedback and ideas from you, the audience, about these issues, because I haven't fully decided, kind of like Dave, I haven't fully decided what I think about this film and its explorations of identity, and I'd be very interested to hear some opinions. So before we begin, a quick content warning. This film it's very violent. There are some representations of body horror, of the violation of the body and bodily integrity. And there is also quite a bit of racism and xenophobia. So please be aware of that. And I will plunge in with some backstory on this film, which was kind of a surprise summer blockbuster in 2009. And the premise is this kind of alternate history. In 1982, a spacecraft bearing about 1 million aliens became stranded over the city of Johannesburg. And despite their obviously advanced technology, the aliens were oddly helpless. They seem to represent the workers or the drones of an advanced society who have somehow been separated from their leaders. So they're stuck on Earth, and the initial kind of humanitarian impulse to help these aliens quickly turns sour and xenophobia starts to set in. So I'll show you a quick clip of that.
And I think they must fix that ship and they must go. Virus, kry 'n selektiewe virus, né? Nee, die aliens uit.
They must just go. I don't know where they go. And they must just go here.
If they were from another country, we might understand, but they're not even from this planet yet.
So I think this is an interesting premise, this first contact with an alien race, but it's not what we might have hoped from watching Star Trek. It's not, the galactic community. And it's not also what we might have feared from other franchises like Alien or Independence Day. It's not an invasion. It's more really banal and mundane. These aliens arrive and there's this initial excitement and curiosity, but then this xenophobia and this kind of just sets in. And the aliens themselves, I think, are kind of interesting corporeally. They are not cute, cuddly, anthropomorphic aliens, but they're also not horrific, terrifying aliens. They're somewhat anthropomorphic. They have, 4 limbs. They're bipedal. They have 2 eyes. They have that biradial symmetry. And I actually find their eyes quite emotional and appealing and communicative. But they're also kind of insectoid and sort of crustacean-like. They have these feelers and their arms have these kind of pincer things going on. So they kind of exist in this sort of interstitial, maybe kind of uncanny valley between humanoid and not humanoid. So anyway, the aliens are first confined to a ghetto, this kind of shanty town, the eponymous District 9. But as the film opens, they're about to be moved into worse conditions outside the city. And it's just often described within the film itself as a concentration camp. And this guy, the protagonist, Wikus van der Merwe, is the bureaucrat who has been assigned to supervise this eviction. And he's not a very admirable character. He's kind of sweet in this bumbling way. He really adores his wife. Here he's showing us a picture of his wife, but he's not very thoughtful. He really seems to enjoy the kind of power trip of being put in charge, and he has no ethical questions about it. He's just doing his job, just following orders, we might say. And there are some really disturbing moments. So here's another clip. And again, it is disturbing. Wikus is going to be shown here supervising the termination of this alien nursery with dozens of alien fetuses.
You hear that? That's a popping sound that you're hearing. It's almost like a popcorn. What the egg does is it pops up. The little guy, what's left of him, pops out there. So that's the sound that you are hearing with the popping.
So that glee right there, that excitement is pretty chilling, I think. Oops. But the upshot of this is that in the process of supervising the alien eviction, Wikus is infected with an alien fluid that begins transforming him. And this is especially interesting to his employers, this corporation that's in charge of the aliens, because one feature of this alien species is their technology, particularly their weapons technology, which is very advanced, but is biologically coded. So humans can't operate it. But once he begins to transform, Wikus can operate it. So he is whisked from the hospital to a secret laboratory where he is subjected to more kind of bodily trauma and bodily invasion in a series of experiments. So again, just a brief clip, which is also disturbing.
Pain threshold, test 1, DBX7. Exit test 1, clear 7.
You know where my wife is? Do you know if my wife knows where I am, sir? Where's my wife? Don't do that. Pull! No, sir, I will not pull.
What did you say about your wife?
Fuck your wife! No, please, sir, I will not pull that trigger. Fire!
So, Vikas is being forced to use this alien weaponry against his will. When he resists, he's zapped with the cattle prod. He'll eventually be forced to kill one of the aliens with their technology as part of these experiments. And we have this, this again chilling scene of the guys slapping each other on the back, delighted by this, and their laughter, of course, echoes Vikas's earlier laughter over the dying alien fetuses. So there's that irony there as well. The next step is to harvest Vikas for the blended human-alien DNA, a process that will kill him. And what's interesting to me about this is that Vikas's body has become an object of both extreme desire and extreme revulsion. So this corporation wants to possess him, to consume him, to break him down, they say, right? They talk about using his tissue and blood and bone marrow. His body has become this commodity, and a very valuable commodity. One of the technicians at one point says that he's the most valuable biological artifact on Earth. But it's also a horrific experience for him. He has become alienated from his own body. And at one point, he actually tries to cut off this appendage that has grown, this alien pincer that he has grown. But of course, it's his arm now, it's his flesh. So he only succeeds in injuring himself. And when Vikas escapes the laboratory, the corporation tries to discredit him by claiming that his condition has been caused by an alien STD and he's infectious. So in this one screen, it says he's contracted an alien sexual disease. He's highly contagious. The public is urged to keep at least 20 meters back. So he just instantly becomes a pariah. His wife and his family reject him. Other humans are afraid of him. He's been kind of forcibly ejected from the human community, right? He's being treated like an animal, a subhuman, a specimen in the laboratory, this commodity again. And eventually he has nowhere to go except District 9. So I want to pause here for a few minutes to talk about Ovidian metamorphosis, because when I first watched this film, I was struck by some of the thematic overlap. And I think the two works interact in interesting ways, and they dramatize similar anxieties about the loss of identity through bodily change. A common theme is the victim's alienation from their bodies. So I'll just mention a couple of brief examples. There are dozens in the Met. But one really famous example, Io, transformed into a cow, right? She tries to stretch out her hands in supplication, and she finds she has no arms to stretch. She tries to protest, but she can only moo. And what I find especially interesting here is that she's frightened of herself, right? She's frightened by the sounds she makes. She's frightened of her reflection when she catches a glimpse of it. And she actually flees herself, say refugit, right, which is futile. So she is really alienated from herself and her own body. Another famous example, Callisto turned into a bear, and her mens antiqua, her former consciousness, persists in this bear skin, but there's this emphasis on the reversal of roles. The huntress has become the hunted. She doesn't belong in any community, right? She's neither human nor animal. She's treated like an animal by humans, but she doesn't feel safe with her fellow wild beasts. She's afraid of bears. She's afraid of wolves. So she belongs nowhere, right? She has no community. So I think Ovid's narratives of metamorphosis are similar to what we see in District 9, where there's this emphasis on the victim's erasure from the human community, especially through loss of the voice, right? That's a really common motif, the inability to even voice or express what is happening to them. And so turning back to District 9, there is a kind of a difference, I think, from Ovidian ideas of metamorphosis, which, as you already know or have gathered, tend to present metamorphosis as a devolution, as downward progress, right? Victims are transformed into wood or stone or animals, they're silenced. And this is obviously, Vicus experiences this very much as devolution and as this horrific process, but there are some complexities here. After taking refuge in District 9, Vicus teams up with this alien, Christopher Johnson, who we see on the left here, and his adorable little alien son on the right. And it's clear that these two guys are not drones. They're perhaps the only remaining members of the leader caste of this species, and they're trying to repair their ship and escape. And the genre kind of shifts to this like buddy movie where Vicus and Christopher Johnson team up to kind of advance their goals together. And this relationship starts to have an effect on Vicus. He becomes a better human precisely as he loses his humanity. And although at first he tries to betray and abandon Christopher Johnson, in keeping with his kind of pusillanimity, he can't bring himself to go through with it. He goes back to rescue his friend and protects him, and kind of sacrifices himself, stays behind to cover Christopher Johnson's escape. And they have this really heart-rending farewell. Christopher is like, "I'm not leaving without you." And Vicus is like, "No, you have to go, you have to escape." And Christopher's like, "I will come back for you." And they have this connection that transcends their differences and transcends Vicus's misdeeds. So in the end, Christopher Johnson and his son escape in the mothership, but they promise to return and rescue Vicus and their people. And our last glimpse of Vicus himself is as a fully fledged alien living among aliens, completely cut off from humanity. So in the last few minutes here, I want to talk a little bit about the politics of representation in this film. And I wonder if the comparison with Ovid can help unpack those questions. So first of all, this film has obviously been taken as an allegory about apartheid. And the director, Neil Blomkamp, who is from South Africa, has said that that's not the case, that it's not an allegory, that it has no meaning. It's all about, it's just good sci-fi fun. And that sort of strikes me as much like when the Coen brothers say that they didn't read the Odyssey before making O Brother Art Thou. I do not believe it. The aliens are described by the humans in terms that really recall white South African bigotry about Black South Africans. The aliens are described as stupid, lazy, violent, impulsive, destructive, all of those racialized tropes. And they, of course, experience the segregation and the ghettoization and also the exploitation and abuse that were codified under apartheid. And within that framework, Vicus's trajectory is kind of very much a white savior narrative. He's humanized by his contact and identification with this other group, and he becomes their champion. So that's kind of disturbing and worrisome. And I'm also troubled that coding the aliens as Africans in this way seems to really reify the idea of race as a biological rather than a social category. On the one hand, it's represented as mutable, right? Because that idea of stable humanity, human biological identity is thrown into chaos for Vicus. He transforms, but on the other hand, that's very much a one-way street. Vicus can transform into an alien, but there's no sense that the aliens could become biologically human at any point. And Frank B. Wilderson III in Red, White, and Black, he's a kind of Afro-pessimist scholar of film studies and African-American studies at UC Irvine. He has suggested, and I'll just quote this for you, Blackness signifies the anti-human, a position against which humanity establishes, maintains, and renews its coherence, its corporeal integrity. So I think that's very suggestive, and that overlap between alien and African in this film really plays into that idea in a disturbing way. On the other hand, Christopher Johnson disrupts a lot of the stereotypes about the aliens. He is a super genius who has basically been building a spacecraft out of trash in a shack. He is also a loving and protective father. He's a good and loyal friend. He wants to help Vicus even after Vicus continually mistreats him. But he's also clearly presented as the exception to a general rule, which is again a disturbing trope. He's the extraordinary alien. And bigotry can always make exceptions because it has to. It can't maintain itself otherwise. And another aspect of this, the predominantly white corporation that employs Vicus is not the only antagonist in the film. There's also this guy who is a Nigerian living in District 9 and profiting by selling food and human sex to the aliens. And he's also trying to unlock those alien weapons, but using magic rather than science. He believes that by literally consuming Vicus's flesh, he will acquire the power to wield these weapons. So that subplot obviously trades on racist tropes. And in fact, the Nigerian government banned the film in protest of the representation of Nigerians. So I think District 9 really clearly privileges the insider's perspective and replicates racist and colonialist views of the other. And we see this through Vicus. Our focus is on Vicus and his experiences. We see the film kind of exploring the insider's fear of becoming the other, especially the physical dimension of that fear. And like Callisto, to bring it back to Ovid, Vicus maintains his mens antiqua, his consciousness, his sense of self, but loses his human morphe, his form, his shape, and he hates it. And he's desperate to regain his privilege. So unlike characters in, say, Avatar or Dances with Wolves, this isn't the story of a white colonialist voluntarily going native and identifying with the other and wanting to become the other. It's the story of a white privileged insider trying desperately to regain his lost privilege. So I wonder if Ovid can help us kind of unpack that. Ovid also, or maybe contradictorily, tends to focus on the experiences of the vulnerable, especially women, and to document their corporeal vulnerability through metamorphosis and also through rape. Stories of rape are very common in the Metamorphoses. So, yeah, I'm still kind of struggling to decide. I'm teaching a course on ancient identities next semester, and I wonder if this film might be good to teach with, might be a good road into thinking about some of the ways that we construct the other, especially the link between corporeal identity and social identity. But I also don't want to validate or give space and airtime to some of these racist and colonialist tropes. So I'd be very grateful and interested to hear some thoughts, to get some feedback on that. And again, thank you all for being here and listening. And I'd love to hear from you about this.